Austin, Texas is known for its lively music scene and friendly community. But in December 2014, a series of terrible crimes shocked the city. On December 6, 2014, Kathy Blair, a well-loved choir director, was found dead in her home. 9 days later, on December 15, 2014, Sidney and Billie Shelton, an elderly couple, were found murdered in their home. These violent events left everyone wondering, what connects these seemingly unrelated victims? Kathy Blair was a 53-year-old music teacher. She moved to Austin to follow her passion for music. Kathy directed the Christian Choral Society, inspiring many with her talent and kindness. Her death was a shock to her family, friends, and students. Sidney Shelton, 85, and his wife, Billie, 83, had been married for 64 years. They were known for their hard work, kindness, and love for their family. Their sudden deaths left the community in mourning. These murders were brutal and seemed to be connected. Both homes showed signs of break-ins, and valuable items were missing. The similarities between the cases suggested a link, but the police had no clear suspects or evidence. The peaceful neighborhoods of Austin were now scenes of fear and grief. The police faced the challenge of solving these murders and bringing justice to the victims. As the investigation unfolded, a surprising lead would eventually help solve the case. What could have driven someone to commit such horrific acts? And how were these victims chosen? This is the story of a community shaken by violence and the search for the truth behind these tragic events. Kathy Blair was born on May 31, 1961, in Burbank, California. From a young age, she had a deep love for music. She moved to Austin to pursue her passion and earned a master's degree in vocal performance from the University of Texas. Kathy dedicated her life to teaching music and became the director of the Christian Choral Society in Austin. For over 2 decades, she inspired her students with her talent and kindness. Kathy was not just a teacher, she was a mentor and a friend to many. Her students looked up to her and cherished the guidance she provided. She had a way of making everyone feel special and believed in their potential. Kathy's dedication extended beyond the classroom. She often organized community events and performances, bringing people together through the power of music. Her personal life, however, was not without challenges. Kathy was twice divorced and worked hard to support her family. Despite these difficulties, she remained a loving and devoted mother to her children. Her tragic death on December 6, 2014, left a void in the lives of those who knew her. The community mourned the loss of a beloved figure who had touched so many lives with her music and compassion. Sidney Shelton was born on September 12, 1929, and his wife Billie was born on March 4, 1931. They were married for 64 years and had a life filled with love and dedication. Sidney and Billie were known for their kindness and generosity. They had 3 children and several grandchildren, and their home was always open to family and friends. Sidney worked as a carpenter, and Billie was a homemaker. Together, they built a life centered around family and community. They were active members of their church and participated in various local events. The Sheltons were loved by their neighbors, who often described them as the heart of the community. On December 15, 2014, their lives were tragically cut short. The news of their brutal murder shocked everyone who knew them. Sidney and Billie were found beaten and strangled in their home, a place where they should have been safe. The community struggled to comprehend the loss of such kind and gentle people. Their deaths left a deep impact on the neighborhood. Friends and family remembered the Sheltons for their unwavering love and support. They were a couple who exemplified what it meant to be devoted to each other and their community. The tragedy of their passing was felt by all who had the privilege of knowing Sidney and Billie Shelton. On December 6, 2014, Kathy Blair's son, Joe Hargis, returned home to a horrifying scene. Kathy was found in her bedroom, lying in a pool of blood. She had been strangled, stabbed multiple times, and her neck was slashed. The violent attack showed signs of a struggle. The police arrived quickly and began their investigation. They found Kathy's jewelry box on the floor with its contents scattered. Drawers had been opened and emptied, suggesting a robbery. Blood was found on the light switch and drawers, indicating the attacker moved around after the killing. Despite the chaotic scene, there were no clear fingerprints or DNA evidence left behind. The meticulous nature of the crime suggested it was carefully planned to avoid leaving traces. Investigators faced a challenging case with few immediate clues. Kathy's murder left her family, friends, and the community in shock and fear. On December 15, 2014, nurse Dow Kotrla arrived at the home of Sidney and Billie Shelton for a routine visit. She found the front door broken and entered cautiously. Inside, she discovered the elderly couple in their bedroom, both beaten and strangled. Billie had also been stabbed in the face multiple times. The crime scene was eerily similar to Kathy Blair's. The Sheltons' jewelry boxes were emptied, and drawers were pulled out and stacked neatly. This suggested that the same person might be responsible for both attacks. The brutality and methodical nature of the crime shocked the investigators. Like Kathy's case, there were no immediate suspects or clear evidence. The similarities between the two scenes led the police to believe they were dealing with a serial killer. The community was now in a state of panic, fearing for their safety and desperate for answers. Tim Parlin became a key suspect in the investigation. Born on January 5, 1964, Tim had a long history of criminal activity, particularly involving theft and burglary. He had spent several years in prison for stealing jewelry and other valuables. Despite his criminal background, Tim managed to find work as a handyman, offering his services to various households in Austin. Tim's connection to Kathy Blair came to light during the investigation. In the spring of 2014, Kathy had hired Tim to perform some yard work at her home. Neighbors described him as a solitary and unfriendly man, which made his presence noticeable. Kathy mentioned to a friend that she found Tim creepy, but she still allowed him to work on her property. This connection drew the attention of the police, who began to dig deeper into Tim's background and activities. On December 6, 2014, the day of Kathy's murder, Tim's whereabouts were initially unclear. However, further investigation revealed that Tim had pawned a piece of jewelry that belonged to Kathy on the same day she was killed. This discovery made him a prime suspect. The police needed to gather more evidence to build a solid case against him. Shawn Gant-Benalcazar, born on February 14, 1984, was an unexpected addition to the list of suspects. Shawn had no prior criminal record and was a high school science teacher with a degree in microbiology. He lived in Galveston, Texas, and had a reputation as a responsible and law-abiding citizen. His connection to Tim Parlin, however, would place him under intense scrutiny. Shawn's sister started dating Tim Parlin's nephew, which led to Shawn meeting Tim a few months before the murders. Despite their different backgrounds, the two men formed an unlikely acquaintance. On December 6, 2014, Shawn was in Austin visiting his sister and stayed with Tim during this time. This placed him in the vicinity of Kathy Blair's murder. When the police questioned Tim Parlin about his involvement in the murders, Tim pointed to Shawn as the person who had actually committed the crime. Tim claimed that Shawn had gone into Kathy's house while Tim waited outside. The police then turned their attention to Shawn, whose clean record and respectable job made the accusations against him seem improbable. Nonetheless, the investigators had to follow this lead to uncover the truth. The investigation began to gather momentum as critical pieces of evidence emerged. The first significant clue was the pawnshop receipt found in Tim Parlin's possession. Dated December 6, 2014, it showed that Tim had pawned a pendant belonging to Kathy Blair on the day she was murdered. This receipt linked Tim directly to the crime. Another crucial piece of evidence was the thermal footage provided by Kathy's neighbor, Rob Leaf. The footage, recorded on the night of Kathy's murder, showed a car pulling up near her house and a person walking towards it. Although the footage did not reveal the person's identity or the car's license plate, it provided a starting point for the investigation. The car was identified as a green Toyota Camry, which matched the vehicle Tim was known to use. Additional evidence included bloodstains found in Tim Parlin's car. Forensic analysis confirmed that the blood belonged to Kathy Blair, further implicating Tim in the crime. These pieces of evidence began to form a clearer picture of the events surrounding Kathy's murder. Tim Parlin's trial began on March 1, 2018. The prosecution presented a strong case against him, focusing on the evidence gathered during the investigation. One of the key pieces of evidence was the pawnshop receipt. This receipt showed that Tim had pawned Kathy Blair's pendant on December 6, 2014, the day she was murdered. This directly linked him to the crime. The prosecution also presented the thermal footage recorded by Rob Leaf. The footage showed a car, matching Tim's green Toyota Camry, near Kathy's house on the night of the murder. While the footage did not show Tim's face, it provided a crucial connection between him and the crime scene. Forensic evidence was another critical part of the prosecution's case. Bloodstains found in Tim's car were confirmed to belong to Kathy Blair. This further implicated Tim in the murder. The prosecution argued that Tim had a history of stealing jewelry and that he targeted Kathy Blair for her valuables. Throughout the trial, Tim maintained his innocence, claiming that he was being framed. However, the evidence against him was overwhelming. On March 20, 2018, the jury found Tim Parlin guilty of capital murder. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The trial of Shawn Gant-Benalcazar started on November 1, 2018. The prosecution focused on Shawn's confession and his connection to Tim Parlin. They presented evidence showing that Shawn was in Austin on December 6, 2014, the night Kathy Blair was murdered. One of the key moments in the trial was the presentation of Shawn's partial confession. During his interrogation, Shawn admitted to entering Kathy's house and being present during the struggle that led to her death. The prosecution argued that Shawn's confession, combined with the forensic evidence, proved his guilt. The prosecution also presented the thermal footage and shoe print evidence. Shawn's gait and shoe prints matched those seen in the footage near Kathy's house. This placed him at the crime scene and contradicted his earlier claims of staying in the car. The defense argued that Shawn was coerced into confessing and that Tim Parlin was the real mastermind behind the murders. They claimed that Shawn was a victim of manipulation and that his confession was made under duress. However, the jury found the evidence against Shawn convincing. On November 20, 2018, the jury found Shawn Gant-Benalcazar guilty of Kathy Blair's murder. He was also sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought some closure to Kathy's family and friends, who had been seeking justice for her brutal death. The verdicts in the trials of Tim Parlin and Shawn Gant-Benalcazar had a profound impact on the community and the victims' families. Kathy Blair's family expressed relief that justice had been served. They remembered Kathy as a loving mother and an inspiring teacher who touched many lives with her music. Sidney and Billie Shelton's family also found some comfort in the verdicts. They spoke about the couple's kindness and the deep loss they felt. The community, which had been living in fear since the murders, began to feel a sense of safety and closure. Public reactions were mixed. Many were shocked that someone like Shawn Gant-Benalcazar, a high school science teacher with no prior criminal record, could be involved in such brutal crimes. Others focused on the importance of thorough police work and the role of evidence in solving the case. Community members organized memorials and events to honor the victims. These gatherings helped the community heal and remember the lives of Kathy Blair, Sidney Shelton, and Billie Shelton. The impact of their deaths would not be forgotten, but the verdicts provided a sense of justice and a step towards healing for everyone affected by the tragedy. The trials of Tim Parlin and Shawn Gant-Benalcazar brought justice for the brutal murders of Kathy Blair and the Shelton couple. On March 20, 2018, Tim Parlin was found guilty of capital murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. His history of theft, connection to the crime scenes, and possession of Kathy Blair's stolen jewelry were crucial in securing his conviction. On November 20, 2018, Shawn Gant-Benalcazar was also found guilty of Kathy Blair's murder and sentenced to life in prison without parole. His partial confession, presence at the crime scene, and forensic evidence tied him directly to the murder. The jury rejected the defense's claim that he was coerced into confessing. These verdicts were significant for the victims' families and the community. Justice was served, bringing a sense of closure to those affected by these horrific crimes. The diligent work of the police and prosecutors ensured that the perpetrators were held accountable, highlighting the importance of thorough investigations and the power of evidence. The murders of Kathy Blair, Sidney Shelton, and Billie Shelton left a lasting impact on the Austin community. The trials and convictions of their killers brought some measure of peace, but the memories of the victims continue to resonate deeply. Kathy Blair's legacy as a dedicated music teacher and loving mother lives on through her students and the community events she inspired. The Shelton couple, known for their kindness and devotion to family, are remembered fondly by neighbors and loved ones. Their tragic deaths remind us of the importance of community and the need to look out for one another. These cases also underscore the need for vigilance and the critical role of community members in solving crimes. The thermal footage provided by Rob Leaf was a turning point in the investigation, demonstrating how even small actions can have a significant impact. The community has come together to honor the victims and support their families. Memorials and events celebrate the lives of Kathy Blair, Sidney Shelton, and Billie Shelton, ensuring they are not forgotten. While the pain of their loss remains, the strength and resilience of the community serve as a testament to their enduring influence. Justice has been served, but the journey towards healing continues.